eventually become of our own
Yeah.
version of the intro. But hey, welcome back everybody to another episode of US Vet Wealth Live. Where we talk military finance 2.0, which is really our version of kind of the beginners 101 personal finance, the stuff you can't believe they didn't teach us, not only when we became adults, like in college and stuff, but even just growing up. But we think in here modern times, the standard cookie cutter knowledge that's given to most active duty service members is better than nothing, of course, but it doesn't really set people up for preparing for the modern economy and all the amazing opportunities that come at that transition. At some point when you leave post-military life, we're taught to look at it as a fear-based, oh my gosh, there's all this change, we got to take care of you. And yet reality is it's the biggest opportunity in your lifetime, because you're coming out as a veteran in the United States of America. Now the year 2021, the internet age, there's just so much going on. But when there's confusion around the basics, it stints the growth to be able to do the really cool things that we do at US Vet Wealth and beyond, and with our partners. So obviously, we've got Trevor with us, as always, leading the charge with our knowledge, but excited to have Gary Redmond joining us from California, someone who's doing the right things, preparing 3 years out from retirement from the military to get set up. And based on what we've talked about, Gary, it sounds like you did kind of the quote unquote right things to at least be prepared to come out of the military, well ahead of your peers. Or what we typically see is most people just come out flat broke, or don't really have a strategy for what they really want to do. And so, Gary, if you could introduce yourself quickly, and then we'll get on with Trevor.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Trevor, thanks for having me. Gary Redmond. I'm originally from Tennessee. I've got about 17 years in the Navy, and essentially I'm trying to navigate this transition. And I tell you, from about year 3, I knew I needed to have a plan, that the military wasn't going to always take care of me. And I wanted to, frankly, end it on my terms and my decision. And my thing that I invested a decent amount of money in was real estate. And to be honest, I fell into some deals early on and I enjoyed it. I haven't always succeeded. I mean, I've had good deals and I've had bad deals, but throughout this, we've been able to find balance through whatever investments that we have outside of real estate, whether it's our investment portfolio, and it's put us in a position where I've got financial stability to the point where I can take some risk. And that's what I'm excited about in the next 3 years. And I'm just trying to learn. I just got my real estate license. I'm trying to succeed as an agent, but we'll see. It's all for me right now. It's just part of the journey and learning as I go, but I'm having fun with it.
No, great, man. And I mean, that's ultimately what we're all about, is think outside the box, try something else out, fail at it, who cares?
Yeah.
But the problem with our whole transition strategy or military financial planning that we get forced down our throats is the basic approach where you get out and it's like, okay, I need a job because I got to replace this paycheck, versus having a strategy where you have some flexibility and protection. Congratulations on hey, whether you did it intentionally or it happened that way and you got excited about it. There's so few of us that do that, but either way, there's risks involved. And to continue on our conversation from last time with Trevor, we're talking about just the general idea of insurance planning, risk management. So we wanted to drill down in that a little bit more. Not something that's very exciting and interesting to me, but things like home, auto, liability, I mean, they are relevant. I think in the military, Trevor, we get a sense of false sense of security, because there are so many benefits and stuff. And at some point, this is your personal life versus your military life, and there's a lot of confusion there. At least there was for me. I just didn't care. It was like, oh, it seemed like the government bank was USAA. So I just, all right, just get all their insurance, whatever. And, that's not fair. I'm not saying USA is good or bad, but obviously there's a lot of different options. It's not always about just getting a cheaper thing. And so, but anyways, Trevor, I'll let you lead the way, and Gary and I can chime in if we have any questions.
Yeah, that's good that Gary's here today, because what we're going to discuss plays into some of that, like real estate. I do real estate investing too. Mine's more of like a side hustle than a main effort right now, but we need to protect that stuff. especially if you have residential real estate, things where somebody might get hurt. You want to protect yourself from liability. The problem with that is nobody looks at this stuff as like, if something happens, how well am I protected? Right. That's, and quick disclaimer, like, I'm not giving anybody individual advice here. Right. I'm not an expert on property and casualty insurance. I'm knowledgeable in it. And, some of the stuff that I'm going to share today is just things that I've learned talking to other experts. And so really this piece here, this is like your safety net, right? Who cares if you save for 20 years and build up $1 million if that can be taken away from you because you weren't paying attention and you rear-ended a car full of attorneys, right? And they all get out, they're holding their necks and they're like, "Oh my God, you're going down, pal." One of the problems is people don't really understand how that liability protection works. And so I figured we would cover some of that today and just kind of maybe give you something to think about down the road, or by the end of this discussion today, hopefully you'll go action some of these things, and I'll give you a little bit of a synopsis of what you need to do when we get done with this discussion.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I mean, you said the car full of attorneys. That's funny, but I mean, how true is that? How many times have you just hear a horror story and you think, "Oh, that can't happen to me," and I don't know. There's tremendous risk out there, and especially in this day and age, everybody wants to take somebody else down. So the best thing you do is protect yourself from having to deal with it. And usually, if you or somebody else is writing a check with big enough numbers, that can take care of a problem. People say it's like, money doesn't solve everything. It's like, well, you got enough of it, or if you got enough coverage to protect it, it can take care of a few things. Okay, cool. So where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, well, that's good that you mentioned the attorney, right? Because I know everybody has that attorney wherever they live. Ours is Lowell the Hammer Stanley.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, what do you guys have in California, Gary?
Man, I have not. I've heard a couple like Lowell. I mean, there's a ton of them being in the LA area. It's kind of the same thing. But the interesting point I was going to bring up, you talked about being easy with USA, having everything to USA. And I was thinking about, I went to the Air Force Academy. And I remember when I got to the academy, I opened up a bank account with Air Academy Bank, which was conveniently on the academy. It was the second checking account I'd ever had in my life. But 3 years into that, my junior year, USAA comes along with this sweet college starter loan for $30,000. They just hooked 1,000 people to join their services. And so I signed up for USAA. And at that point, it was just easy. I did everything through USAA. I'm like, oh man, I've got my auto insurance. I got my renter's insurance. And I wasn't, I think at that point, smart enough to think about there's other options out there. The one thing that I, just recently learned is, man, every company is not an expert at every insurance. USAA is not really a life insurance company. If I want life insurance, I for sure is not going to go to USA just because their rates are not great. But everybody, it's easy. I can log on to my USA account. What do I need? Do I need life insurance? Click. I'm going to click here. But I think people don't want to shop around. They like convenience, and and I get it. It's a tough decision. It's an absolutely boring topic sometimes. It's not something people want to spend money on, and they take the easy way out, and they just leave a lot of money on the table.
And I'll tell you this, like I look at a lot of people's liability insurance because that's just something I want to know about. Like, what good is it for you and me to sit down and build this plan and put everything together if you can go rear end somebody and it's all going to get taken away from you. Mm-hmm. USAA, huge company. Like any of those big companies, they start expanding and doing more stuff, and you get to more of like they do a lot of stuff, mediocre kind of level of quality versus focusing on one thing and doing it very well. And we've seen that USAA gave up all their investment business, right? Because they were like, hey, this isn't, it's too much of a pain in the ass to really manage anymore. So they got rid of it. But, easier doesn't always mean better. And there's a cost associated with any of this stuff that we get. And so I'm not saying that cost isn't a factor, because I know it is for some people. Not everybody makes, a ton of money, but really we'll talk through some tips and tricks on how to make some of this stuff more affordable for you. Really what you need to look at when we're talking about liability protection is, what does it do for you in the end? How much are you being protected for? How much do you need? Okay, I have $100,000 of coverage. Well, that's great if the most somebody's going to sue me for is $100,000. What happens after that? Now they're going to say, okay, well, the insurance company is going to say, hey, here's your $100,000. Have a nice day. Anything after that is you're responsible for it. And so you need to understand that if that happens, hopefully it doesn't, and chances are it probably won't. But do you really want to risk, the last 20 years of savings that you've done on that? Right? I don't. And the cost to me it's really not as much as you might think.
Yeah, because it's like, I think most people don't even realize there is a risk, right? I mean, or especially how big it can be, and how liable they can be for it. And that's the one thing I did remember. I never shopped around for cost, because it didn't seem like a factor, and it did seem like it was so cheap. I mean, relative, if something's $15 versus $10 versus $100, I mean, if we can't afford $100 a month, or if that's really going to break the bank to get a little bit extra peace of mind for overall, wellness, wealth and wellness,
Yeah.
it's shocking. I mean, the reason, but I think there's a lack of understanding of concern, to need it. So it just seems like, oh, I got to get this thing. Let me just find the cheaper one. Right. So Trevor, how important is that?
So I guess it's really, you need to understand what it is that you might be liable for. And this isn't legal advice or anything, but if you kill somebody, guess what? Now on top of killing them because of your negligence, there's a good chance there's going to be a civil suit filed against you. Like, if they have a family or something like that. So if you killed somebody in a car accident, it was your fault, and the family decides to sue you. If that person there's this misunderstanding that a lot of people think that you can only be sued for whatever your coverage is. And so they get these state minimums and they say, hey, nobody can sue me from. That's not true at all, right? How much somebody can sue you for isn't dependent on your own circumstances. It's dependent on theirs. How much did you cost them, right? What are their medical costs? What's the opportunity cost for them not being able to work?
Oh, what's their loss of income? And so
what's their loss of income?
If you take out a high-end doctor,
I'll tell you this: if you killed somebody, who's got 30 years of working left, and they made $100,000 a year, that's the net present value of that income stream is about $2 million.
Okay.
So somebody could go sue you for two. They could say, hey, you know what? You killed my husband or my wife. I can't now, aside from them being gone, I don't have that income coming in anymore. So you have to replace it because it's your fault, right? You owe me $2 million. That's your human, the term they use is your human life value. And this is something that any insurance agent who's, knows what they're talking about should be able to figure out how to calculate that for you. It's not based off of 10 or 20 times your income. It's looking at doing the math on it, figuring out what's their income stream, what's the amount of time that income stream would realistically continue for, and being able to get that much. Now, maybe the court might say, hey, we're not going to award you 2 million, we're going to award you 1.5 million. The difference between whatever the insurance provides and whatever you're responsible for, the trick is to make that as small as possible. And we talked about this before, right? Insurance is a transference of risk to a third party. So if I only have $50,000 of coverage and I get sued for $1.5 million, the insurance company is going to be like, oh, that's easy. Here's your $50,000. We'll see you later, right? However, if the insurance company is into it for $1.5 million or more dollars, maybe they're going to be a little bit more motivated to help you knock that down a little bit, right? Because now they're on the hook for that $1.5 million or $2 million.
Oh, that's a
So,
good point.
you know, the insurance company can hire, you know, an equally, you know, powerful attorney to do battle with.
Leverage their lawyers. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I mean, so the insurance, I mean, the reason to get a lot of insurance is to get people on your team, because it can get pretty nasty. So no, that's a great point.
Yeah. So now you got that guy fighting for you instead of, you know, it's just a smart way to do things.
Go ahead, Gary.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. As I was just thinking about this, Trevor, as you know, as I've purchased insurance throughout my years, specifically auto insurance, I've never really gotten good advice on what that, you know, they'll spout out numbers. Usually it's the state minimum. Hey, what I have to have for the requirement for that state. But other than that, I've not received any good counsel as far as, well what should I have as liability insurance?
Yeah. And well, actually, Scott, I gave you that slide. Do you have that, that picture I sent you?
Oh, the car one?
Yeah. So no. I sent you one in the chat earlier.
Oh, I'll get that. I'll get that loaded up.
Yeah. So we'll keep talking about this too. The other one is your house, right? Or you know, Gary, like me, you have rental properties. If something happens, if one of your tenants throws a party and somebody gets hurt, you know, they fall down the stairs or the ceiling fan comes loose and knocks somebody unconscious, you know, they can come after you for that too. So you want to make sure that you have liability insurance that'll cover that. You know, typically on your house, most of the liability limits that I've seen are between 300,000 and 500,000. There we go. All right. So I don't know if you can see this. It's kind of small, but this is kind of a breakdown of car insurance. If you look at the green circle, right, that's your per accident or per person, right? So if you get into a car accident, you're covered under this person's policy. They would be covered for $500,000 per person in an accident, right? So if they got hurt and it was 500,000, the insurance or 600,000, the insurance company would cover 500,000 of that, and then either additional insurance, which we'll talk about here in a minute, or you know, whoever the person was would be liable for that 500,000. And then you look at the red one next to that, that's the per accident. So that person is covered for up to $500,000. And I'll just say it, this is actually mine. So I just use it as an example. So I would be covered for $500,000 per accident, up to, you know, $500,000 per person, and in property damage of 500,000. The other thing that I wanted to talk about with this, one of the most expensive things that people don't understand about their car insurance is the deductible. Most of the people I talk to, I see $250 deductibles, $500 deductibles, and I don't really understand why their deductibles so low. Look at the cost of the coverage. That's my Tacoma right there. $169.67 for 6 months of coverage, right? For $1,000 deductible, I couldn't imagine how much it would be. It would be more than the cost of the insurance if the deductible were any lower. $118. That's, I mean, maybe I should raise that deductible up to $1,500. I've got the cash to cover it, right? And plus, if I go get a, you know, $1,100 scratch on that, I'm probably not going to make a claim because I can just cover that myself. I don't want to make a claim and it's going to make the cost of my insurance go up and all that other stuff. So it's not really a big deal, but you can raise that deductible. And a lot of times you can also raise your limits along with the deductible, and you might even save money on your coverage.
Yeah, I'm always concerned. I mean, it's like the tax thing. Like, oh gosh, I'm getting a great rebate on my taxes at the end of the year. It's like, or you could have just paid less out of your
it's my money.
monthly, right? And so, you know, when we're cash flow, you know, it's all about cash flow and taxes in our strategy. And so the idea is, hey, if you can free up cash flow now, you know, for the highly unlikely, assuming you're not an idiot, let's assume this. Let's assume you just want to be a good driver. You don't have to drive 20 miles over the speed limit and race around somebody who you think's driving too slow every 5 minutes, because that's what causes accidents. If you know you're not an idiot, regardless of your past driving, because basically the cost is based on your past driving experience. So so even if you're not looking so good, whatever you can do to reduce the monthly cost, again, assuming you're conscious and want to be intentional with lowering the risk, because ultimately you have the most control. I mean, you might get in a car accident because of some other idiot driver, but if you're attentive, I mean, we know. I mean, Gary, you fly planes for a living, right? And so I'm assuming you guys are more intentional with taking that aircraft up.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that with our daily lives? I mean, how dangerous is out there on the roads? That's one of the things I like about being self-employed is I have to spend significantly less time on the road compared to the average American, where it's frankly very dangerous out there and expensive if you look at numbers like these.
Yeah, I think that's one thing we always talk about is calculated risk. And, driving a car is so repetitive that I've done it for so long. I'm confident in my abilities, whether they're good or bad. It's just something we don't consider, I think.
Right on.
Yeah. And so, the car one, that's a big one. The deductible, look at what your deductible is. Go out, talk to more than one agent. This stuff changes. Like different companies are better than others at different times. Some people like to use brokers who can go out and shop a bunch of different companies. Other people like to do it themselves. Here's the funny thing too about insurance companies is that a lot of them will give better deals to newer clients.
Sure.
That's
how Geico saves 15 minutes, 15%, because they're just giving a new client a deal, right?
But that's the problem is, you need to also look at not only what you're paying, but what you're getting from that, right?
Right.
Same thing with your house. Again, you want to have a certain amount of liability. Normally I've seen 300,000 to 500,000. There's deductibles that go with that. Normally it's equal to probably close to what your car is. But here where we're at in Virginia, we have to worry about hurricanes. One of the deductibles that you'll see on there is your wind and hail deductible. A lot of these are, depending on how much your house costs, could be, you'll see it's a percentage. Normally what I like to tell people is try to keep that around 1%. So basically what that means, like me, if my house is $500,000 and I have a 3% wind and hail deductible, if I have to have my roof replaced because of a storm, I'm going to have to pay $15,000 before the insurance company comes in and pays for that. Well, why do I have a deductible? If it's something like that, like why do I even use the insurance? Because the new roof's probably only going to cost about $5,000 more. So with that, I probably want to look at reducing the amount that I have to pay. Yes, you're going to pay a little bit extra for it. For something like that, though, it's just one of those things you have to do the math on. Like for me, I'm like, okay, I want a 1% deductible on mine. So now I only have to pay $5,000 if my roof has to be replaced. Because it's just funny. Like the new roof would cost me $20,000. I'm responsible for 15,000 of that. Why am I? What's the point of having that deductible so low?
Yeah,
right. Same thing especially if you have like rental properties and stuff too. Like the whole point of owning rental or investment real estate is you want maximum cash flow. The other one, the last one I'll talk about too, is what we call the personal liability policies, the umbrellas. Basically, it's an additional liability policy that you can buy that kicks in once you've reached your typical liability limits, right? So for me, I have $2 million in an umbrella coverage because I have my vehicles, I have my house, I have rental properties. Once those liability limits get reached, like on my car, right? $500,000 per person, 500,000 per accident. Well, what if there's two people in there and they both get messed up? Okay, I've got this additional $2 million in liability protection that I have. So if somebody sues me, all right, I'm covered for $2.5 million. And again, this goes back to hey, now you're putting some of that weight on the insurance company. Do they really want to write a $2.5 million check? Probably not. The big thing about those, that I like about the personal liability policies, normally you're going to pay about $150 to $200 per year. per $1 million.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Okay.
Especially for somebody who owns real estate, I won't talk about that. I could go down the rabbit hole talking about the LLCs and stuff. We can save that for another time. I know Gary probably
Well,
chime in.
That was absolutely the question I had, Trevor, because I have an umbrella policy myself, which based I saw your limits that you have on there. I need to up mine a little bit, but that's the umbrella policy versus the LLC. Which one's better? What should I have? I still struggle with that. So yeah, I mean, that would be a great discussion that I would love to chat, whether offline or on the show as well, to talk about the differences, because I think that's very valuable.
Yeah, I think that's super important, because the other idea to think there with the LLC, because I get this a lot with career military guys, like, man, I'm going to get my pension and then I'm getting this sweet government contracted job. It's like, oh,
yeah,
my taxes are going to be huge. And it's like, well, essentially you're just in consulting anyways. Why not set up an LLC consulting thing on the side so you can so you can at least have some write-offs?
Yep.
And it's like, oh, okay. I never thought about it. Oh, by the way, the liability. I mean, there's a lot on there, but no, I think that's a great idea to dig into that a little bit deeper. The LLC thing, or it's just, the idea of starting a business and then having the liability aspect of that conversation there as well.
I know. I was going to say, maybe I have like a real estate investing, one of these sessions planned out. So maybe we invite Gary back for that and talk about that stuff a little more in depth.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good idea. Let's do it in the context of real estate investing first, since you guys are a little bit gurus there. And because that's something I always like to learn more about. But I'm going to be the kind of person, rather than go and do my own real estate, I'm just going to give you guys money and have you go find the properties. I don't like dealing with the pipes and all that kind of stuff. I want to travel. And well, cool, Trevor. Anything else before we jump off? I know everybody's got somewhere to be here shortly.
Yeah, no, I wanted to give like kind of an action item to end this with. So yeah, when you get done with this, go talk to whoever your insurance agent is, State Farm, Geico, whatever. Go talk to them, go shop out, say, hey, I want, these limits. You might have to raise your limits to get a personal, like an umbrella policy. A lot of the times they'll say, hey, you're required to have this amount of coverage on your auto, liability, and home and all that stuff. But definitely go shop those limits out, compare them. Don't compare just the cost, compare the coverage that you're getting, and set yourself up for success so that, you don't have to worry about spending your life savings on somebody else's kid's college education.
Right on. I think it's a great action item to end it on, and just take a look. Stop thinking about cost. Start thinking about value. That's really what we're all about when we talk about the idea of wealth. So cool. Well, hey, I gotta jump off to get on a Veterati call. Those are always fun. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, so I haven't done one in a while. So I'm excited to see what the person wants to pick my brain about. But no, Gary, really appreciate you joining us on this.
Thanks for having me.
Look forward to having you come on more when you're available. And just to continue this kind of personal finance discussion, and get some other we really like the perspective of the way you're looking at things and stuff as well. So cool. Well, all right, guys. For all the listeners out there, make sure you're subscribing to the show and sharing it with folks, especially if you're hearing this on the podcast. We're loading this on the podcast with all the interviews we're doing and some other kind of thoughts and ideas around transition to post-military life. Just got a lot of great content on there. We're already at episode like 35, I think, posted today. So I think that's all I got. We will see everybody next time. Take care. Friday.
Thanks.
Gosh, it's already Wednesday. Awesome. Take care, guys.
Bye.